When I pulled up to my twin sister Mariah's apartment that night, the porch light was flickering like it was trying to warn me. I'd felt it in my gut all day that something was wrong. We had that twin connection, always did, even when life pulled us in different directions. I was the loud one, the fixer, the I'll handle it twin. She was softer, quieter, the one who always gave people the benefit of the doubt, especially that man she married, Darius. I remember how my hands shook as I banged on her door, calling her name, the sound echoing through the hallway. When she finally opened it, I barely recognized her. She had on this old sweatshirt pulled up around her face, but I could still see the swelling on her cheek, the way her left arm hung a little stiff. She looked like somebody had dimmed her light from the inside. I didn't ask questions at first. I just pulled her into my arms and held her. "You're coming home with me," I told her, my voice trembling even though I tried to make it sound strong. She didn't argue. That's when I knew how bad it really was. Mariah never stopped defending him before, never stopped saying, "He's just stressed, Tasha. He didn't mean it." But that night she didn't say a word. The silence between us said everything. Mama met us at my place with that mix of fury and heartbreak that only a black mama can carry, pacing the kitchen in her housecoat, mumbling prayers while she made tea. "Lord, give me strength not to go lay hands on that man," she said. The kettle screamed right when she did, and somehow it felt like the house itself was agreeing with her. The next morning, I watched Mariah stare out the window like she was trying to remember who she used to be before love turned into survival. "You don't have to go back," I told her. She just nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. That's when the idea came to me, wild and dangerous, switching places. We'd done it before back in high school just for fun. But this time it was about more than mischief, it was about justice, about protection. "Let me be you for a while," I said. "Let me deal with him." First she thought I was joking. "Tasha, that's crazy," she whispered, glancing toward the window like he might already be outside. "He won't know the difference," I said. "He don't pay attention to the details, never did. You said it yourself." The plan sounded ridiculous, but it made her laugh for the first time in weeks, and that was enough for me. We spent that night at Mama's, practicing her tone, her walk, her favorite phrases. Mama begged me to let it go, but she didn't try too hard to stop me. Deep down she understood. A mother's faith is one thing, but she raised daughters who know how to fight back when the world or a man pushes too hard. So the next evening, I showed up at Mariah's house as her. Darius opened the door with that fake smile he always wore in public, the one that never reached his eyes. "Hey baby," he said, reaching to touch me. I stepped back just enough for him to notice. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm, my eyes steady. Inside, the house smelled like expensive candles and cold air. Beautiful but empty, like their marriage had been. For the next few days I played the role. I cooked dinner, folded laundry, answered his questions with her practiced softness. But every now and then I'd slip, call him sir, a little too sharp, stare too long, let my silence speak louder than words. He started getting nervous, confused. "You different lately," he muttered one night. "You finally seeing things clearly," I told him. And he just frowned like he didn't understand English anymore. By the third week, Darius was unraveling. I made sure of it. I'd take his phone when he wasn't looking, delete his messages, mess with his calendar, forget to cook his favorite meal, turn off his alarm so he'd be late to work. Small things, petty things, but each one chipped at his control. He started doubting himself, losing that confidence he wore like armor. Meanwhile, Mariah was staying with Mama, healing, eating real food, sleeping through the night. She was laughing again. I'd call her in the evenings, tell her everything. Sometimes she'd feel guilty, say, "Tasha, maybe this is too much." But I'd remind her of that night, the fear in her eyes, the way she flinched at loud sounds. "You just focus on healing," I'd say. "Let me handle the rest." And Lord, did I handle it. I made him look in the mirror and see what he'd done. Through confusion, frustration, through the cracks forming in his perfect world. He started accusing me, well, her, of cheating, of lying, of turning cold. "Maybe you just finally met your match," I told him. One evening he tried to raise his voice, but I stepped close enough for him to see the fire in my eyes, the fire that wasn't my sister's. "Touch me," I whispered, calm as Sunday morning. "Try it. I dare you." He didn't. He just stood there, trembling like he was realizing for the first time that not every woman he could break would stay broken. A week later, I packed up her things and left a note on the kitchen table. "She's done. We're done." Then I walked out and didn't look back. Mariah was waiting in the car around the corner, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. When she saw me, she broke down crying, and I held her, both of us laughing through tears. "You're free now," I told her. "He can't hurt you anymore." Months passed, and life started to settle into something like normal. We found a little rental house in South Atlanta, me, Mariah, and Mama, and built a new kind of peace. Every morning, Mama made coffee that smelled like home and talked to God out loud, like he was sitting right there at the table. Mariah started taking classes again, working part-time at the community center. I picked up extra shifts at the salon, trying to rebuild what the last few years had worn down. People in the neighborhood knew our story, but they didn't judge. They brought casseroles, prayed with us, told Mariah she was brave. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the kids ride bikes, the streetlights flickering on, the hum of the city like a heartbeat. "You think he'll ever try to come back?" she asked one night. I thought about it, then shook my head. "Even if he does, he'll find a woman who don't exist anymore." That made her smile, small but real. She was coming back to herself piece by piece. And me? I learned something too. That family isn't just blood. It's the hands that hold you when you can't stand on your own. It's Mama's quiet strength, Mariah's gentle spirit, and even my own stubborn fire. Together we turned pain into power. Darius ended up moving out of state. We heard through cousins he was keeping to himself these days. Good. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fire. It's peace. Still, there are nights when I wake up and hear Mariah crying softly in her room. Healing isn't a straight road. It's got turns, detours, and days when you feel lost all over again. On those nights, I go sit with her, wrap her in a blanket, and we talk about everything and nothing, the twins we used to be, the women we're becoming, the life we're still learning to build. Mama says God works in mysterious ways, and maybe he does, because somehow out of all that pain came a kind of freedom neither of us expected. We switched places once to protect her, but somewhere along the line, we both found a strength we didn't know we had. The world kept spinning, bills kept coming, work stayed hard, but our laughter came easier. Every morning I'd look at Mariah over coffee and see that glow again, the one I thought Darius had stolen for good. And I'd thank God quietly, not for revenge but for resilience. Because in our little house, filled with second chances and the smell of Mama's biscuits, we'd learned that sometimes surviving is its own kind of victory, and living well with love and peace is the sweetest payback of all. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across the kitchen floor where Mama was already bustling about, humming a hymn under her breath while frying eggs and bacon. Mariah and I sat at the table with our mugs of coffee, watching the steam curl up and thinking about the day ahead. Life had started to feel stable again, but stability has a way of hiding cracks until they suddenly shout at you. Mariah had been doing well at the community center, tutoring kids, and she'd even picked up a weekend job at the bakery down the street. But I could see the tension in her shoulders whenever she answered a phone call or looked at the clock too often. "You okay?" I asked, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. She gave me that faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said, but I could hear the "I'm not" behind the words. Mama chimed in from the stove. "Child, you've got that same worry look your father used to have before he left us. Don't carry the world alone, Mariah." We all laughed lightly, though the tension lingered. It wasn't the past Darius could reach anymore, but the fear he planted, the memories, they didn't just disappear. And sometimes it felt like the city itself reminded us. Every man on the street, every loud argument in the apartment complex, every sideways glance, reminded Mariah that her world had been broken. That's when I realized my role wasn't done. Protecting her physically was one thing. Helping her reclaim her peace, her confidence, her ability to laugh without hesitation, that was the real work. By mid-morning, I was running errands while Mariah handled the community center schedules, and Mama was off to church to pray for the world and for our sanity. I stopped at the grocery store, filling the cart with the basics and a few treats: peaches for the weekend, chocolate chip cookies for us to share, and a small bouquet of sunflowers because, well, sometimes the soul needed bright things. At the checkout, I ran into Tyrone, a neighbor from a few blocks over, who always had a way of making small talk feel like catching up with a cousin. "Tasha, you look like you've been keeping busy," he said with a grin. "Busy and tired," I admitted, smiling, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He gave me a look that said he knew more than I wanted him to. He'd heard about Darius from the grapevine. "Mariah's lucky to have you," he said quietly. That hit me in a way I didn't expect. I'd done what I did for my sister because I loved her, because Mama raised us to fight for each other, but it also made me think, how many women out there didn't have a twin, a sister, or someone strong enough to step in? And that thought stayed with me, clinging like humidity as I loaded the groceries back into the car, feeling both pride and the weight of responsibility all at once. Back at the house, we unpacked groceries while sharing stories about our mornings. Mariah told me about a little boy at the center who reminded her of us as kids: curious, mischievous, a little too smart for his own good. I listened and laughed, and for a moment, the house felt alive again, filled with warmth instead of tension. But as the afternoon sun fell into shadows, the past crept in like an uninvited guest. Mariah's phone buzzed with an unknown number, and her hand froze mid-reach. "It's probably nothing," she said quickly, trying to mask the nervousness in her voice. I didn't say anything, just watched her. Sometimes silence can speak louder than words. She answered, and the color drained from her face. "Darius," she muttered, voice low. My heart thumped, but I kept my calm. "What did he want?" I asked, stepping closer. She shook her head. He says he wants to apologize. Says he's changed." I frowned. "Changed?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Tasha, I don't know," she admitted, uncertainty warring with the relief she tried to summon. I put my arm around her shoulders. "Listen, he doesn't get a free pass because he's changed. You decide if he's even worth the conversation. Not him, not anyone else." Mama appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, and gave Darius's name a look like it carried the weight of judgment itself. "Child, men like that don't change overnight. You remember what we taught you. Respect is earned, trust is built, and safety ain't negotiable." That was all Mariah needed to hear. She ended the call, set the phone down, and let out a shaky laugh. "See," I said, squeezing her hand. "Freedom doesn't come with strings attached." The evening came with the smell of baked chicken and cornbread filling our little house. We sat around the table, Mama blessing the food, Mariah talking about her favorite kids from the community center, and me chiming in with stories from work. After dinner, we gathered on the porch, sharing iced tea and watching the neighborhood kids run by, their laughter mixing with the hum of traffic in the distance. Tyrone passed by and waved. We waved back, feeling the small sense of community that had grown around us. As the sky darkened, Mariah leaned against me and whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you." I smiled, brushing her hair back gently. "You'll never have to find out." Mama looked at us, tears brimming, and muttered another prayer under her breath. That night, as we settled into bed, I thought about how far we'd come, how fragile yet resilient life could be, and how sometimes the biggest victories weren't headlines or money. They were mornings like this, sisters safe, a mama proud, and heart slowly learning to beat without fear. And as I drifted to sleep, I made a quiet promise to keep watching over Mariah, over us, and to keep turning every shadow of the past into a step forward toward the light.